so it comes. Okay, we will start on the line on Ein Zayin. This is a couple lines below the middle of the page, maybe just the one. Huh? No, that's much further. I want to start Shenim Shachlodem Odisha. Bina at the end. Even though you may have passed through it, but we didn't really emphasize what the point in there is. So we're aiming to explain the principle. How is it? What does it mean that matzah provides the union of Meichin the Abba, but Katnus Abba? What is Meichin the Abba and what is Katnus? And this is how matzah strengthens the Emunah. So to explain this, that brings down what the Gemara says, that a teenage Yidei Likri Sabo, that in order for a child, when does a teenager get to be able to know Yidei, have the das, Likris Abo, to call Likris, to call father? This is when Yitim Tam Dogon, when he tastes the taste of Dogon. We discussed already. And this is Mamshich. This is Mamshich Das. Okay, we are starting with the line, begins Shenim Shachlodem Odisha, at the end of that line. It's just below the middle of the page. Shenim Shachlodem Odisha. Got it? Now, we have to understand that when you say that the teenage Yedeya gets das by eating, by Toim Tam Dogon, it doesn't mean that the Dam Dogon creates the das. Dam Dogon doesn't create das. Dam Dogon means the taste of Dogon, the taste of grain, of wheat, barley, Dogon. Hamishu Mini Dogon. This is the fundamental food. We discussed this at length the other day. It doesn't create a das. He knows the das surfaces. It begins to develop. So the Tam Dogon is like what we discussed the other time. What was the word? A trigger. Not a skill, a trigger. It just strikes him. This is a sense of reality. Like we said about us learning from a cat. Remember that? That we would learn from a cat sneeze. The cat wouldn't teach us sneeze. We have das, we have seichel, it's infinitely superior to the cat. But something has to trigger it, because our das is in a ruchnizdike level. We don't know how to translate our das, our ruchnizdike perception of goodness and kindness and godliness, how to translate it on a physical level. This is a separate thing. How do you eat decently like a human being? I know what a human being is, but how to translate it in terms of how you sit, how you eat, That's something which there has to be a trigger. You see a human being eating, and you see an animal eating with its on the floor with its face into the food, or something, or like some animals eat with their paws holding the food. You say, oh, that's like neat. This is so. The human being immediately says, oh, this is nicer than that. But not that he learns it from them. It makes sense to him. And this is how he develops his das. But everything that human being does, this is something which we repeated many times over in the last few days. Everything that human being does, it does with das, with seicha. It is not just an instinctive action. Not an instinctive action. And this, in fact, is proven by the fact that a human being, Rahman al-Islam, if he is misled, if his das, if his seichel is led in the wrong direction, he can act lower than an animal. There's no guarantee. No guarantee how a human being is going to act. He can act like a malach, and he can act like an animal. And worse than an animal. So when he learns decency, simple human decency, it's not that he is limited to it. He cannot do it. It is on his seichel, and his das says this is right. That has to be triggered. And this happens, and this trigger, so to speak, is the stam dogon, the taste of dogon. And we discussed the other day. This is a little more subtle and more profound, but I'll say it anyway. So in Mitzvah Shem, it'll make sense another time. Maybe it'll make sense right away. The whole inyan of das, of having a sense of the truth, of right and wrong, the inyan from das, as we discussed, is that this is right, not because of the consequences. If you do it differently, such and such is going to happen. Das means this is right because this is right, not because of any consequences. To have such a fundamental sense of right and wrong, of good and bad, that you identified on the spot as such, you have to be able to relate to something real. You have to sense, there's something really real that is real on its own, not because of any extraneous, any add-on elements. And this is what dogon is. Among all the food that we have, dogon is this fundamental food that does not have any extraneous tastes. A person eats bread not because it's sweet, sour, salty. It's bread because it has a sense of food. It gives a sense of well-being and health. Nothing else. You eat meat, it has a special taste. You eat fish, it has a special taste. You eat a fruit, it has a special taste. So it doesn't have this das element. It's food because it's food. It's food because it has. I eat it because there are some extraneous, some additional. And dogon is this fundamental food that does not, basically, it doesn't have any extraneous thing. On the contrary, when they take dogon, when they take flour, wheat flour, and they clean it out, make it white bread, they say, this is not the real thing. It's not even healthy. The healthy bread is like we eat rye bread or even black bread, fundamental bread. This is the real thing. To remove the coarseness from the bread and giving it some kind of a of a light taste, it's not great. And it's not considered healthy. You understand what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about, right? You understand? So, this is das. Das, something has to strike in a person's mind that there is such a thing as something real in and of itself, not because of consequences. There is an interesting phenomenon. Any of you musicians? You're a musician? No. There's an interesting phenomenon. This exists in every field, but in music, this is something which can be readily identified. There's something that's called a person having a perfect pitch. It's a terminology. What is the term of perfect pitch? Anybody can identify different notes as you go through. A, B, C, D. You can see that A sounds different than B, and B sounds different than C, and so forth. You go up and down. Anybody can identify. But not everybody can identify if they hit a note. What note is this? Not in comparison to the one next to it and one before it. What note is this on its own? For this you need what's called a perfect pitch. You sense the reality of a certain note independent of anything else. This is the sense of das. It's das in music, that you actually have a feel for it. This is the sense of das. Das means that you know this Indian on its own, by itself. Just like, I give you the example, das, what das per se means knowledge. And when you go through a course of study, and you finish the course, now you have to give a test. How is the test? A test is a list of questions. And you have to answer questions not in context. What does a certain word mean? Come on, give me a sentence, I'll tell you what it means. No, just tell me what it means. That's what das. That's what knowledge. And so this is, like you explained, that this is superficial knowledge. This is knowing answers on the paper. But real das is knowing things on a much more meaningful level, on a life's level. What is the reality of this? What is this being in life? This being das. And a child to know Father, this is a life's identity. This is a reality. When he says Father, he does not mean not you, but you. He means you. He doesn't need three people to identify his father. Or it's not you. It doesn't look like you. It's not you. It's them. He identifies him directly, and he doesn't identify him because of his looks at all. He's just drawn to him. This is Father. To have that kind of das, to be able to relate to another human being, and this type of direct manner that does not require any explanation. It's not based on explanation. It's just a direct recognition. This is an element of das. This is the pshat sefer. Anybody can explain, I know this is your father because I remember, when you were born. That's not das. Das means that you know it directly, like the perfect pitch.
About the animals, they're born, they recognize also the...
No, they don't. But animals, there are many things that are similar. Like we said, we learn from the cat sneeze. But the cat doesn't, like we explained, the cat doesn't know what sneeze is. Does not know what sneeze is. It has an instinct that this is the way it does it. This is the way it does it. Just like it walks on force.
Same thing what you're saying about knowing his parents have an instinct to notice their parents, but they don't understand.
What?
You're saying that the animal knows who its parents are, right?
Well,
You're saying it's an
it
instinct.
doesn't know its parents. Let me explain it again. I mean, I'm not going to go to discuss animals, but that's what I'm saying. There's no such thing as knowledge in an animal. There is an instinctive connection, a dependency, whatever it is, like an emotional connection. It's not knowledge. It's not doubts. By a person, by a human being, is it's a very painful perhaps phenomenon, but it's very real. A person who grew up not knowing who his parents are. He was adopted out. He doesn't know who his parents are. And he calls his adoptive parents his parents. And they are wonderful people, and they relate to him as a son, a child, and they really gave him everything that a parent does. And he appreciates it all. And if he has a feeling for them, he loves them because they're very good people to him. And then he finds out who his parents are. It creates havoc, turmoil. Why? You have no Sheishes with them. It creates turmoil. This phenomenon does not exist by animals. You want to see a concrete difference. It doesn't exist by animal at all. By animals, there is such a thing. By kosher animals, it doesn't happen. But non-kosher animals, it happens when the mother has a calf or whatever it is. For some reason, it's what's called merachik. It doesn't relate to it as its child, as its offspring. And it doesn't want it to nurse for him. It doesn't relate to him as it does. It happens. It's all instinctive. And he didn't make that connection. Finished. It's finished. It's possible for them to allow a different kind of animal, a different species of animal to nurse, and its own offspring not to learn to nurse. It's a different thing. All right. So we take pains to understand, to explain this concept of das, and to understand that this is a very, very special quality in a human being. This ultimately has to do with emunah. It's the power behind das is emunah. The power behind das is emunah. Because emunah, you with me? Emunah is that element in the person that gives him the sense that there is a reality in the world. Without emunah, the world is real only to the touch, only as an external element. If I touch it, it's there. If I don't touch it, if I look at it, it's there. If I don't look at it, it's not there. that which is there incessantly. Incessantly means without interruption. Huh?
Like constantly.
Constantly. It's fundamentally, it cannot be interrupted. Like we say, with closed eyes, with open eyes. The reality itself, that's called Emunah. Emunah tells him that there is something really real. And Das is a reflection of Emunah. Something really real, not dependent on anything. So, I said a lot to you, Mitzvah Shem, over the years you'll reflect and you'll see, you'll Mitzvah Shem, settle in. This is very important principles. To understand that Emunah is a real element in the human being. Not only it's a real element, this is the human being. All his intellect, all his reality depends on this Emunah. Even to know father and mother depends on Emunah. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, we have the line. At the end of the line, behold, we see that when this teenage, this infant, this child, gets to taste the tam dogon, who koiroi Abba, then he calls him Abba, Father. The koruch elov, the leiv nefesh, and he is tied up to him with the heart and soul. V'yesh lo ga'aguyim elov, and he has ga'aguyim, he has a thirst and a longing to his father. If he is missing his father, he didn't see his father for a whole day, he is missing him. He's drawn to him. So this is a real tie, a real union, something that is actually, so to speak, completely internalized. Avol im kol zeh, but even so, with all that, hine hadas hu b'bchinas katnus. This is where we wrapped all, I think, last time. This das still has an element of katnus. What does that mean, katnus? She'enei makir es ovir k'mei hagodl. But he does not recognize his father like the godl, like the grown-up person. What's the difference? This one says it's his father, this is his son. What is it not like? What does he recognize him like the godl? So Yodeya, because the godl, Yodeya Umakir Esoviv, he knows and recognizes the real meaning of father. Shemipnei Mahu Ovi, what does it mean he's his father? Why is he his father? He's his father because he gave birth to him. He brought him into the world. This is his father. This is the basis of his existence. That's what the Gadol knows. The Kotan doesn't know that. The infant, the child doesn't have that understanding. Shehei Lidoy. Ki, only what does he have? Okay, we have to follow the next couple of lines. Mashu hu koruch acharov, only the fact that he is tied up to him and he is drawn to him. V'koiroi Abba, and he calls him father. Okay. But he doesn't have the full richness of the hakor, of the cognizance as to what that represents. Avol in kolzeh, but even so, even though there is such a big gap and difference, you would see between the knowledge of the child and knowledge of the Godin, of the grown-up, in terms of this dance. Nevertheless, it still happens to be that the bchinas das koten zeh, the tinok, that in this small knowledge, this small das of the child, melubosh is contained, kol hadas, the full knowledge, the full das, just the way it is by the God. You with me? This is, please understand what the Rebbe is saying over here. The Gadol knows about all the ramifications, what it means that he is his son, and he is his father. The child, the infant, doesn't begin to understand what the ramifications are. And yet, and that is why it's called katnus. He has it only superficial element. Nevertheless, in this das of the cotton is melubash, is contained all the das of the God. How? Okay, first we have to understand what that means. Okay. What does this tell us? This is telling us that this das, when you say that I know the pilpul. I know a pilpul. And the child, I give him only the superior, akasha and teretz. But I know the whole people and all the references and everything else. So I know infinitely more than what the child knows. He just knows the akasha and teretz. So you can't say that this which the child knows is identical to that which the adult knows. It's not the same knowledge. But when you say that in the das of the tinit is contained the entire das of the Gadol, what does this tell us? We are talking about a certain nakuda. You know what nakuda means? Certain point, certain insight that you can enrich it or you can narrow it down, but the insight remains the same. This is called emunah. This is the truth. You can enrich it. Have a broader perspective. But even if it is a very limited and narrow perspective, it is essentially the same. If something that is dependent on structure and on proofs, the Gadol has much more knowledge of the proofs and the substance and the reason than the Kohen. But something that is essential knowledge of a Nakuda, they know the same thing. Father. Now this is not finished yet. Melubash kol hadas k'mei shehu eitzel hagadol. Is contained the entire das and the way it is by the Gadol. Shemasig asoviv, who comprehends his father shehilida kanal, because his father gave birth to him. So what is the father? What father mean to the Gadol? What does what father mean to the Gadol? Father, the real thing, not just that he is connected to him, not just that he is bound up with him. This is what the Kohen knows. He's bound up to him. I can't break this connection. I can't sever this connection. I know why. The Gadol knows why. Because he's his real father. His whole reality is based on the reality of his father. You can't sever that relationship, that connection. So by the Kohen, what happens? This is just the fact of it, that he has that connection. The Gadol knows the essence of that connection. So therefore, in that respect, the Gadol has a much richer knowledge, das, a much deeper, much more meaningful das than what the Kohen knows. And yet we say they're identical. The whole das of the Gadol is contained in the das of the Kohen. How can it be?
The fact that the Goder knows all the things that he knows that he's his father because he gave birth to him. This is part of that itself. This is part of other parts of things that he understands.
Right. This is not. But understand that. Yeah, you're right. So there's something that was missed here. The Kohen knows that he is his father, and the Gadol knows that he is his father. The Kohen knows that my relationship with this person cannot be broken. That's the problem. It cannot be broken. I don't know why. It cannot be broken. The Gadol knows that this relationship with his father here cannot be broken. But the Gadol also knows not why, but what it means, father. What does the word father mean? That he and he are one thing in this world. The Kohen also knows that he and he are one thing, but he doesn't know how they became one thing. He knows that he is one thing because he's bound out to him. And every time he sees him, it means something to him. It means something special to him. It means to the Kohen, it means to the Gadol. But the Gadol has the full insight of what it means. It touches him, he recognizes the full richness and impact of that statement. Shehilida. That cannot be changed. So it's not the same. This is the definition of the word father. It's part of the definition of the word father. It's part of the das. That's why I said we didn't finish yet. Okay. We underlined that begins canal, right? Look inside. So in this das, in this small das of the cotton, is contained the entire das of the Gadol. Although the Gadol is masik asobim shehelido, and the cotton is not masik asobim shehelido. And yet, in the das element of the cotton, is melubish the das of the Gadol. This will explain your question also a little bit more richer. Why? How is it? How is it contained in the das? Shaharei, since that Gam hagodol shemevin heitei, even the Gadol shemevin heitei, who understands well what it means that he is his father, and how come he's his father. Gamkein, even that Gamkein, what's mean Gamkein? He too, ein rak shekol Abba. It's nothing more but the fact that Koirei Abba, he calls his father, him father. How does this knowledge translate by the Gadol? Koirei Abba, he calls him father. How does it translate by the cotton? He calls him father.
It's also not more than the fact that he calls him father?
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is not about what he told him. The difference is what he actually understands, what he feels.
The calling him father, this expresses his entire feeling. Let me explain to you what that means. It's true that the Gadol knows that his father gave birth to him, a leader. Now, what does Godel, this great wise person, what does he know about giving birth? What does he understand about that? Yeah, a Godel. A Godel should be Gdoil. What does he understand about that? What? A decent amount. Zero. Yeah. He doesn't understand the whole thing. This is a godly thing. It's not something a human being can understand. He doesn't know what it is. Some kind of a godly miracle. What is the das? Does he have a das? And that's what we're saying, that birth and the whole thing of marriage in Hashem by all of you, this is something which is beyond human comprehension. We know what we have to do, but the result of it is beyond human comprehension. This is why by Chassan is such a tremendous simcha, because it's something which we cannot really relate to it. We can't really put it into words. What's happening here? How did a new family get born all of a sudden? For what? This is what is the element of godliness in the human being that is completely beyond his natural presence. It's not a natural thing. It's not something that we can understand with our seichel. We know about it, but that's the end of it. So, how does it translate by the Godel? Koiroi Abba. That's what it translates. It calls him Father.
Then if it's such a nothing, then what's exactly the difference between him and the Katan? Difference of nothing, a bit more.
Well, that's what we're saying. There's certainly a different insight. When the Godel calls him Father, he has a deeper insight into this term, Father. But bottom line, how that this ultimately translate in the fact that he calls him Father. On the contrary, a Koton is really still bound up with his father, and he cuddles him, and he holds him, and a Godel goes on to build his own home. When he goes down to build his own home, he still calls his father. There is much less dependency on that moment. But he has a much broader and deeper comprehension, understanding what it means, Father. Why is he Father? What does it mean? Shehoy leader. So this is the great thing that the Rebbe is explaining. That when this Tinok, Yodei Alikros Abba, as a result of having tasted Tam Gogon, this is real now, real Das. On par, what on par means? With the Das of a Godel. This child is completely bound up with his parents, and he misses them deeply if they don't see them. And when he sees them, he gets excited. You think it's because the parents take care of him, they cuddle him, they love him. There's a much deeper thing in this. There's a reality element. He's really bound up with them. And there's no substitute. Just as there's no substitute for a God.
That's why
Really?
And the children, they're screaming like they stay by somebody's house, like over for a night or something. When they're screaming for the parents, you can't ever calm them
You
down.
can't, there's nothing you can do, right?
Depends how much nuts you take out of the kettle.
I want mommy, right? It's finished. The end of the night. The end of your babysitting skills.
Beginning of the night.
So this is a phenomenal statement over here. This das is truly a gili, a revelation of an inner koyach, of an inner intellect in the human being. To be able to relate to the nekudas ha'emes, to something that's true. Because it's true. Not because of any ramifications. You know what ramifications means? Of any consequences. If you call me father, I'll give you a can. You know what I'm saying? It's none of that. It's a phenomenal thing. It's a koyach hanefesh. And it gets triggered by this tamchit. And I pointed out last time, it's not that he eats chito, and that develops it in koyach. No, it's tam dog. The tam. That the whole experience triggers a certain thing, brings out a certain truth in his mind. Okay, we'll just continue on, and then this will repeat again if need be. שאדם הגודל שמבין היטב גם כן אין רק שקורא. The Godel also doesn't have any more really than שקורא. That's how it ultimately expresses itself. וכן גם קוטן זה, and the same thing this cotton, קורא. He also calls him father. הגם, although, כן מבין מפני מה הוא קורא. He doesn't understand why he's calling this person father. Nevertheless, he calls him father. He doesn't know why he's calling him father, and he calls him father. So the entire knowledge of the Godel that results in calling him his father, is now minimized, so to speak, and reduced to the knowledge of the cotton that he also calls it father. Mudaza cotton. I mentioned before that the essence, the basis of all das, of all knowledge is emunah. Is emunah. The entire knowledge of the Godel, whereby he calls him Abba, he calls his father, is melubush, is mislabish in the das hakot, when he calls him father. It's the identical thing. When we think of a child, we think of what's called a selfish little menschele. Right? It's quite selfish. If something is uncomfortable, he makes a roar. Throws a tantrum. He wants this, and then there's no alternative. And everything is really based on himself, based on his own experience. And then comes this phenomenon. Then comes this phenomenon that he calls his father, Father. And he's bound up in his father, not for any obvious reasons, so to speak. He is me, and he is this other person. All of a sudden, I know the other person, not because I know myself. I know him. This is called Das. I know someone outside of myself. This is a real phenomenon of Seichel, of Das. And who has it? This little infant, little child. And it's not based on the fact that his father is taking care of him and he is paying his bills and all of those things. Right? It's not even based on the fact that the father gave birth to him. He's just tied up to him. Just a real connection.
He has to see him though, right?
He sees him. So this is called him father. And when he doesn't see him, he misses him. But what does this tell us? That despite the fact that this is a child who is self-indulgent and who is basically selfish, not because he's a bad person, but because his mind didn't develop yet, and yet he has cognizance of this truth that is not based on his own experience. This shows that we have the real gift of koiches hanefesh, of knowing the truth, not by personal experience, but just knowing what the truth is. This is what Das is. This is what I said before, that Das is based on the Munah. Because the Munah is this primary knowledge of a truth. That is not based on any experience, just knowing. That's heading in the show. To the extent that the knowledge of the adult and knowledge of the child is identical. It's a phenomenal thing. Sorry?
The knowledge of the adult and knowledge of the child is the same, you say?
I'm sorry?
The knowledge of the adult and the knowledge of the child is the same? What was the last word you said?
Yeah. This Das element, he has a broader, a deeper, broader knowledge of it, but the ultimate message, what connects him to him, what connects the child to the father, whether he's a child or an adult, it's the same thing.
So it's two different aspects in knowledge. One is like a deeper one is a higher
No,
one. Then
a broader one. It's not a different aspect. It's just a broader. He knows more about it. He has a full comprehension of it.
Well, then,
But the Das element is exactly the same. Because I explained before. They told the adult, oh, he gave birth. What's that mean? What did he do? He can create another human being? Your father is able to create another human being? Really? Oh, wow. Oh, what a man. What a miracle worker. Right? That's not the way you think of it.